Traditional military indicators like troop counts or aircraft carrier groups take a back seat to raw topography in the Persian Gulf. This is a 3D topographical map of the Middle East. Stripping away political borders highlights the specific terrain features that define regional power. The entire region pivots on the Strait of Hormuz. This highly congested waterway between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman measures just 33 kilometers wide. These 33 kilometers separate two distinct geographic zones. To the north lies a massive elevated mountain range. To the south, the flat, exposed desert of the GCC. This geographic asymmetry creates a volatile strategic environment. Closing such a narrow gap of water would trigger an immediate crisis for the global financial system. The northern terrain is dominated by the Zagros Mountains. This massive, rugged range spans to the Strait of Hormuz, functioning as a natural fortress. This terrain also provides a perfect offensive platform. Deep, sheer valleys allow Iran to conceal drone and missile bases from satellite detection and aerial bombardment. In contrast, the GCC side of the map lacks any natural defensive topography, consisting primarily of a flat expanse of sand. This leaves every piece of critical infrastructure in the GCC, energy grids, cities, and American military bases, sitting on a flat plain. Their exposed footprint is difficult to defend against asymmetric drone swarms launched from the mountains. Topography allows Iran to project power downward onto a plain that offers no natural cover. This animated diagram maps the outbound flow of global oil. A massive arterial line originates in the GCC and passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Approximately 20% of the world's oil supply travels this path. Once through the strait, the flow splits into three primary branches, feeding the major economies of East Asia. These nations rely on this single choke point for the majority of their energy needs. India receives 60% of its oil via this route, China receives 40%, and Japan receives 75%. Japan serves as a case study for the stakes involved. Its government has calculated the exact timeline for economic collapse if this flow is interrupted. If the Strait of Hormuz closes, Japan exhausts its energy reserves and faces a total economic collapse in 8 to 9 months. The strait functions as the physical pacemaker for the Asian industrial bloc. While the GCC generates immense wealth, the region remains an artificial construct that cannot naturally sustain its current population density. This diagram shows the reverse flow of resources. The GCC exports oil to import the base elements of survival. 80% of all food consumed in the region must be imported. The most urgent vulnerability is fresh water. Lacking natural reserves, the GCC depends on desalination plants. These are industrial factories that process seawater into fresh water through electrical and chemical filtration. 60% of the region's water supply is manufactured in these massive coastal facilities. A $2,000 drone launched from a mountain can target a multi-billion-dollar factory sitting in the open. These life support systems are difficult to protect. The security of the GCC rests on centralized life support infrastructure that is nearly impossible to defend. This regional vulnerability is linked to the United States financial system through the petrodollar. The petrodollar system ensures that international oil sales are transacted in US dollars, which creates constant global demand for the currency. This diagram maps the recycling loop. When the GCC sells oil, they require payment in US dollars, accumulating massive currency reserves in the Gulf. The GCC then reinvests these dollars directly back into United States financial markets. Since 2012, massive capital from the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Kuwait has flowed into Wall Street at an unprecedented scale. This capital is concentrated in a small group of massive tech companies. The growth of firms like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, and Google is fueled by these GCC investments. The continuous growth of the U.S. stock market relies on the continued operation of exposed desalination plants and oil rigs. Iran faces its own systemic weakness. While the mountains provide a defense, the country suffers from severe climate change and chronic drought. The established counter-strategy for the U.S. and Israel involves bypassing the Iranian military to target their fragile water supply. This strategy involves targeting dams, reservoirs, and civil power plants, weaponizing the geography against the population. By cutting off water access, the mountain fortress becomes a mountain prison. The outcome is mass starvation, rebellion, or a refugee crisis. Both sides are engaged in a strategic game of chicken, where the goal is to destroy the opponent's ability to sustain human life. If both sides successfully dismantle the other's infrastructure, victory is determined by sociological endurance. The Iranian demographic is influenced by Shia theology. This branch of Islam historically normalizes martyrdom and struggle, making the population resilient to prolonged suffering. The GCC demographic is characterized by expatriate labor. In cities like Dubai, 90% of the residents are foreigners. If the fresh water supply is destroyed, this foreign workforce will initiate an immediate exodus, resulting in total economic collapse through rapid capital flight. In a contest of infrastructure collapse, a deeply entrenched population is likely to outlast a transient, wealth-dependent one. The sequence of events is clear. If the Strait of Hormuz closes, infrastructure is targeted and the oil stops. Without oil revenue, GCC nations lose their influx of US dollars. To fund their survival, they will be forced to liquidate their American investments. This sudden withdrawal of capital targets the core of the US stock market, specifically the tech companies that drive current growth. This economic risk is why international actors like Europe, China, and Russia are preparing to enter the conflict to protect their energy lifelines. The economic shock of this withdrawal precipitates a depression in the United States. In the Middle East, topography is destiny.